I'm Cathay Reynolds. I'm the Associate Vice President for Engagement at Colorado State University. I want to welcome you here today as the launch event for the Ag Innovation Summit. Along with Dr. Greg Graff. Greg, wave your hand right here. And Craig Beyruti is the Dean of Agriculture. We were involved in the first value chain conversation, which led to this particular day, if you will, and a thorough conversation about ag innovation. We have an opportunity today to listen to some amazing people, and we want your feedback as well. First of all, I want to welcome and I want to thank very much Bill Hammerich from Colorado Livestock and Terry Fankhauser, who is the chair of Colorado Cattlemen, for the conversation about we need to ground the summit. We need to ground it in agriculture to begin the conversation, because we are 2% of the land and 98% of the people in Colorado don't really live on the land. So we need to make sure that we're all kind of grounded. This morning, I want to recognize Carrie Van Heist, who is the CEO of the Van Heist Group. Where is she? There she is. Carrie is the one who, when we were having the conversation with Terry and Bill, came up with the Roundtable, because it's been quite successful internationally. So we have a really robust Roundtable. I think over the next 2 days, you're going to see some of the most amazing people, and 21 of them are gathered here, and I'm going to introduce them as they do their 90-second introduction to you. A little housekeeping issue, straight down the hall to the left, are where you'd like to go during the break. That's the break we're going to have in about an hour. And also I want to recognize that we have several people from the media here. We have Peter Petrie, who is Carrie said I should say two decades of editor for the Fortune magazine. We have Jesse Newman, who will be here from the Wall Street Journal. Jesse, are you here yet? I actually checked. Lee Porter is here from Innovation News. We have Michael Brownlee from Local Food Shift, and then we have Brian Ulmer from Barn Media. So we want to thank our media folks for listening and participating. Peter will be facilitating a panel later on in the conference, and I think you're going to find all of these quite fascinating. We have more chairs as people come in, so please make sure you have a seat. We have a couple of seats here in the front if you'd like to come up and join. Followed by a short break, I will turn it over to Ed. And right now what I'd like to do is introduce my partner, Jesse Newman. They just had you with Benny Goodman a minute ago. So Ed Goodman is an alum from CSU, has spiral experiences that he teaches and trains and works with large companies. So I'm going to ask Ed to kind of set the frame for you all about the day and how we're going to participate, and talk a little bit about what happens after the break.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm especially excited to hear all the wonderful snapshots, the various opinions and position statements of all of these wonderful experts that have gathered today to share some wisdom and some insight into their various parts of the agricultural industry and all its related industries that are connected in so many ways. We're all connected to this world of agriculture, and so it's wonderful to have such a diversity of opinion here. I'm really excited about that. But after they've given you their snapshots on the world, we'll take the short break, as Cathay mentioned, and when we come back, it's going to be my job to sort of lead us to imagine a little bit different future. In the spirit of innovation, as an innovation summit, we're going to look to the future. We're going to look down the road about 10 to 20 years, and we're going to imagine a very different future, a much more connected future that will take the innovations, the wisdom of the past, and the innovations of the future, and combine that with the connection to consumers, and look at the future in a very exciting new way. We're going to craft a lot of ideas out of the session when we come back, and I may ask you for yours as well at times. So as you're hearing the discussions, be thinking of your own ideas as well. But we'll be hearing lots of insight from our experts, and it should be a wonderful time. So that should be a terrific way to kick off this summit.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, we're going to begin. We have a tight time frame and a lot of expertise in the room. So we're going to start. I'll introduce them as they come. Thad told me when he came he wasn't sure what title ever goes on his tabletop, so I'll give you a few more. Thad Simons is the president and CEO emeritus of Novus International. He's also the co-founder of the Yield Lab and the president of International Food and Agribusiness Management Association. So what we'd like the panelists to do is give us in 90 seconds. This is my job to go put my little hand here and say 90 seconds is up. in 90 seconds what it is from your perspective, and Thad carries a very big perspective on several fronts, what it is from your perspective that you see is the challenge and the opportunities and abilities that we have in the next 5 to 10 years. So Thad, one more thing before I start. We do have folks writing down here. This is really for Ed and my benefit, but please look at those as we go through the day if you see ideas you'd like to have. Thad.
Well, thanks, Kathleen. It's great to be here in Colorado, and I'm happy I was able to join you. My background has really have been working with Monsanto and then with Novus over the past 23 years, large agribusiness, and that's been a great career. We started the Yield Lab after I retired from Novus last year because we recognized the challenge really is in terms of where's the funding going to come from this for all this new technology, all this innovation we need. There's been a lot of venture funding that's gone into other fields, into healthcare, medical devices, but there really has been a lack of funding in this space and a lack of mentoring of young, not always young, I would say, but of new companies, new startups. So what I'm trying to do with the Yield Lab is to put a focus on that, to bring attention to that. So we have in our first group of companies, first portfolio, 5 companies. We had 115 applications from 15 countries just starting last year. And that tells you there's a huge demand out there. So my takeaway from this really is there's not a lack of good ideas and opportunities. It's really how can we get the attention of people who can apply those, get those into the market, and get those more rapidly adopted by our farmers, growers, and ranchers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Bill Hammerich. Bill Hammerich is the president of Colorado Livestock Association. So Bill?
Thank you, Cathay, and thank you for the invitation to participate in this discussion today. And looking at everybody's comments, I was impressed by the depth of knowledge that they all express, and I'm excited about the discussion that perhaps is going to ensue here because based on the diversity of thoughts and ideas about very similar topics, it should be a very robust discussion. Of the things that the Livestock Association is involved in daily, and as we look down the road to the future, there are a lot of fronts that we deal with, but 3 kind of rise to the top for us. The most important one on a daily basis for us is dealing with regulation. And I don't think that there's anything about that area that is going to change. Primarily, we deal currently with environmental regulation as relates to air and water. But in looking through some of the comments, I think it's probably pretty obvious as we go through the next decade, we're going to be continuing to deal with things that affect our human resource, things such as GMOs, drones, and other areas that big data, how are we going to control that, who's going to have responsibility. I think along the way, regulation is going to play a significant part. Secondly, and I don't know that this is a good, bad, right, or wrong thing, but I think it's inevitable that consolidation is going to continue to increase. The big are going to continue to get larger as they deal with such things as increasing regulatory pressures. But at the same time, I think there's also opportunity here for the niche markets, be it organic, natural, and others. I think they too will continue to grow because I do believe that even though the masses in general need or deal more with a commodity type product, there are segments of our society who want those niche type products that are produced. And then number 3, and this may ultimately prove, in my opinion, to be the most critical over the next decade, how are we going to deal with, as agriculture, the pressures that are going to come about as to how we allocate the resources, primarily our land and our water. And here in Colorado, water is a very, very important resource. We are a headwater state, and as such, we're encountering pressures that aren't experienced by other countries or other states here in the United States. So,
thank you, Bill. I'm going to pass the mic down. We are wireless. They are very sensitive mics, so we'll have to share. Alex Pfeifer from IBM is the next one. He gets the award for coming the farthest. Alex just got in from Sao Paulo or from Rio. So Alex Pfeifer is the Business Development Executive from IBM Research in Brazil. Alex.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I really came from far away, and Bill just mentioned water. Usually Brazil is thought of as a place where there's a lot of water, but we've also been facing in this past couple of years a lot of water restrictions. And so this is a big topic now, also for agriculture. And that's one of the few trends that I'd like to discuss here. One is this the pressure from natural resources that are limited that need to face help companies face a increased demand from growing population. So we have 7 billion people on the planet nowadays, growing to 9 billion people, and you sort of have to deal with that with the same amount of land, with the same amount of water, with the same amount of or less inputs. Water is one of them. These types of other pressures on demand coming from rise in the middle classes. So countries such as Brazil itself and other emerging economies, more and more people are going to eat meat, animal protein, and that also puts pressure on the producers, still given the same amount of resources. Now, one trend that is favorable, though, is that more and more we have information available. So more and more technologies come to the help of the whole industry, from farm to fork, to the help to make the right decisions with the right information, and so that you make the you can meet the challenges from those demands. So from an IBM perspective, what we bring to agriculture and what we're interested in seeing is what are the new business models, what are the specific ways that technology can help everyone in this value chain to turn into truth these promises of technology, right? The technology that helps this increased demand given a limited amount of resources. Some of the things that we can do and some of the things that we envision are marketplaces where you can, where companies, new entrants, startups such as the ones that Thad was mentioning, can provide solutions to niches, specific demands, and scale them up worldwide if necessary to help these specific niches meet those demands. We have some examples, some cases that we can talk more about over the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So our next panelist is a good friend of mine. Trudy Kareus is the director of the USDA Rural Development and was also with Farm Service Agency. And full disclosure, she just had a root canal yesterday, so be kind to her.
I'm a graduate of CSU, so I am going to be here no matter what. Go Rams. Thanks very much, Cathay. I'm speaking, I'm representing all of USDA, which is a big job, obviously, and I also want to represent my agency, USDA Rural Development. 3 areas of concern and some big challenges that we are working on at USDA. The first is the aging population of our farmers in this country. We have a lot of programs at USDA that are actually moving that bar forward, but it's still a challenge. The average age is 58, and we are focused on that. The second challenge is climate change. And for all the reasons that we've just heard, droughts, excessive moisture, in order to feed the world, and we're going to need to address this important issue, and I look forward to a conversation about that. And the third topic that USDA is focused on is hunger. Not just hunger in this country, but hunger worldwide. Our farmers feed the world. And so we do have programs that we focus on in this country. We do a lot of, our school lunch program, our breakfast program, our after-school lunch program, our summer feeding program. But it's a challenge and a concern for USDA. And then down locally for my agency that I now direct, we are working, we do loans to build hospitals, water and sewer treatment plants, et cetera. We want to work with communities with the idea that we combine resources, that it's not one community coming to us, but a number of communities combining their resources to build a hospital or to build a water or sewer treatment plant. We think that's the wave of the future for USDA and for rural developments in rural areas.
Thanks.
Thank
Judy.
you.
Our next panelist is Mark Wdowik. Mark is the Assistant Vice President for Research here at Colorado State University with Innovation and Partnerships.
So she said innovation, so really that's kind of where I focused on. It was the whole technology, commercialization, and innovation arena. You know, I've always been a big proponent of early adopting new technologies because they really provide capability that we didn't have before to make better decisions. And if you look at the ag space, I think we have better tools today than we've ever had. You take a look at satellite data, resolutions down to a meter. You take a look at how do you measure sensors that are put into the ground for measuring water, moisture content, movement of water, predictive capabilities through weather and rainfall, as well as things like DNA testing and sequencing. All of that really translates to what you heard from Alex earlier, and we were having a conversation about it, is this issue of big data. And everyone keeps talking about big data, but it's a reality. So we have great tools, and we have a lot of data. The question is, how can we synthesize that data with new techniques, with new modeling capability, with new products and services to really make all these tools usable, not just to large corporations, but to the family farmer. And again, I think if we can do that, then we help everyone across the board, not just from a yield perspective, but from the perspective of optimization of use of our water, for example, and our soil capability today. So really, that's where I'd like us to, I think there are many people on the panel that will be talking about technologies and big data, but it concerns me in our inability to synthesize a lot of that data. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Our next panelist is Alan Lewis, who's become a good friend over the past few years. He's the Governmental Affairs, Investor Relations, and Organic Compliance with Natural Grocers by Vitamin Cottage. Alan?
Thank you, Kathy. Really honored to be here with everybody. I thought this was a roundtable, no?
You know, it's as good as I can do.
So Alexander certainly gets the prize for longest distance. However, Natural Grocers has a policy of only using hybrid transportation, so I just spent 22 hours on a mule to get here from Denver. So recently, we saw a small group of Americans occupy cities across the U.S., including Washington, D.C. They called upon the financial industry, policymakers, to ensure that all Americans have the opportunity to better their lives. They called for every community to have access to fair lending, quality schools, reliable communications, and affordable health care, among other things. What they were calling for is fairness, justice, opportunity, economic security, the basic values.
The mic went down.
Do we just lose? Okay,
There we go.
the basic values on which our country was founded. If this brings to mind affluent young urban people with blonde dreadlocks camped out at tents and dodging police pepper spray, you've got the wrong decade. Because what I'm talking about is the tractorcade and the protests of American farmers parked on the U.S. Capitol lawn, demanding fair treatment for rural agrarian America. Because yet again, the interest rates, land values, crop prices, international trade, technology, innovation, investments, farm policy, and the movement toward consolidating many little farms into a few big farms conspired to push families off the land and rural communities right off the map. So the meaning of innovation, for me, the innovation depends entirely on how it helps us achieve regenerative farms, healthy rural communities, and food systems that support our fundamental American democratic values, the same values of the determined, angry farmers who drove across the country to demonstrate in Washington. So everyone here understands that the economic efficiency of vertically integrated production and processing. But I think we've really yet to take stock of what results from a vast chemical-dependent monoculture under corporate direction, if not control. And if you look back on our watch over the last 100 years, it's yielded a heartland that is more and more depopulated, disconnected, and disenfranchised. So I come from Denver, born and bred. Your brethren in the cities, those of us already pushed off the land, remember that we have ag's back. When you make your complicated choices about what to grow and how to grow it, ultimately as Americans, we all have these shared values. So together, let's choose to implement innovation based not on glib, futuristic promises or fear-mongering about world hunger. Instead, we should base our discussions on whether or not innovation will support our shared American values of family, freedom, community, and independence. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Our next panel member is Kent McDaniel. Kent is the Vice President of Marketing and Services for Crop Production Service.
All right,
Welcome.
I'm honored to be here as well with a group of folks that are all attacking probably one of the, maybe the most important issue, and that is how do we feed the world, and we are in the breadbasket right here. As I read the other panel members' comments that are varying in lots of different ways, but the one common thread amongst almost all of them is how do we produce more with less? And I think that's what kind of it all boils down to. If you look at the growth rate of population and you combine that with, since we're sitting here in the United States of America, whose government has said in the next 10 years we will be a participant in renewable energy to the tune of about 5-fold, you can almost say it's a daunting task to be able to achieve both of those in combined. But if we look at the history of agriculture and the production increases that we've had, produced more with less, we've achieved that to this point, and I'm fairly confident that we'll achieve it going forward. In our particular sector, kind of goes back to some of the comments that Mark has already made, and as I see agriculture in the next 10 years, which was the question of the panel, I believe that we will be using the technology that Mark referenced to be able to manage fields, not manage fields, but manage maybe square meters within fields with all of the crop inputs, whether it be fertilizer or attacking a pest that's in one part of the field that's not in another, or the rate in which we plant. All those things are on the cusp of being very, very impactful today with Bluetooth technology, quite frankly, and the ability to manage enormous amounts of data that not in too far in the past, that size of data, it would have been economically infeasible to store from lots of different aspects. Today, layers and layers of information can be stored, can be transmitted real time to a piece of equipment going across the field as it's applying whatever product it's applying. So I'm not sure how all that fits together, and I think that's what Mark was referencing. We are all trying to figure that out and figure out how that works together. But the crystal ball, I think, is clear. That is the way we will manage production agriculture in the future. The how is what's a little bit in the question.
We hope
Thanks.
to see some of those hows in the next couple of days. Our next panelist is Bob Mattive, who is the president of Worley Family Farms from the San Luis Valley. Bob.
Thank you. When Ed introduced us as experts, that always worries me because I was always told an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So, but as I look forward to our next decade in ag, a lot of thoughts come to mind, and many of those have already been expressed and will be expressed again. But our expanding use of technology and biotechnology, our increase in exports. As a potato producer in the San Luis Valley, exports are an important part of our market, and we want to continue growing that. But we also have labor shortages and labor needs going forward. Educating young producers to come back into agriculture is critically important. We've got an aging population, and we need some youth and new vigor in that industry. And then we always wrestle with that term sustainability and how we'll arrive at some definition there. We live in a fast-paced economy. Our industry is working on ways to provide a convenient product for consumers. One of our biggest challenges, though, right now in the Southwest, as many of you know, Colorado is a pretty arid state, but is our drought condition. That's going to continue. We've been in a drought situation since 2002, and we don't see a near future resolution to that. We employ water-saving techniques with our center pivot irrigation. We'll be exploring drip irrigation, other methods, also alternative cropping methods as we look at more bed planting, different ways to produce more in less ground. We look at traditional as well as biotech breeding programs that can offer us improved varieties, both for producer benefits and consumer benefits. And we, again, continue to battle with the water as there's competing interests between urban and ag. We see already within our industry, ag industry, much technology being adopted, whether it's GPS technology, GMO, a lot of different UAVs, different things there. But the key point is so many of these jobs, or they still require manual labor. We can't get our crop harvested out of the ground. We can employ a lot of technology, but we still have to have people. And labor is becoming a more difficult problem to overcome. Education, that's a key component. We need to educate both consumers and producers and be ready to move into the next generation, informing them about the health benefits of our products. And again, just keep moving forward. You know, we all embrace technology in every way. How many of us use GPS maybe to get here? We employ that in our farm equipment, and that's going to continue to be a vital portion of our farming practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Our next panelist, and I apologize for going to the back of the panels, but if not, they get to see my back end for 90 seconds, and that's not a good thing. So our next panelist is Paul Sherman, President of Sales and Marketing for Viera Wireless.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I've heard a recurring theme since, going through the first panelist on protecting our natural resources and using technology to assist with that. So you don't have to be a scientist to know that the adoption of the usage of the internet and data and cell phones is growing at an exponential rate. Not even 20 years ago, less than 0.5% of the population was on the internet. Fast forward to last year, about 43% of our population was utilizing the internet globally. So the adoption rate is just growing faster and faster. There's a global research firm called IDC, and they estimate that by the year 2020, that business transactions on the internet will reach 450 billion per day. So data consumption and applications to improve productivity are growing at an exponential rate right now. Today's farmers and ranchers are using technology as an intricate tool for remote monitoring of wells, grain bins, center pivots, refrigeration systems. They've also found uses for technology to assist them with navigation of equipment, as we heard, tracking weather patterns, and even connecting veterinarians with doctors. Telemedicine has provided a way to monitor the health of herds of livestock via Bluetooth and satellite technology, allowing for advanced notice of emerging diseases. Take a moment to think through how telemedicine will transform and improve how farmers and ranchers manage the health of their livestock, minimize loss by having access to a veterinarian instantly or a specialist from another part of the world. Imagine being able to provide instant feedback and results with farmers and ranchers across the globe. The possibilities are endless. The biggest threat in our industry is, along with the lightning pace of data usage, there's limited amounts of spectrum available, and evolving applications that are using it have pushed a recent FCC spectrum auctions to new highs. The AWS-3 spectrum auction that was held just this last November finally ended at $40 billion, which was a mere 4 times the set reserve price of $10 billion. So, thank you.
Our next panelist is Tom Lipetzky. Tom was my partner on the Colorado Blueprint and working on the value chain for the governor of Colorado. Tom is also the director of marketing programs and strategic initiatives at the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Tom?
Thank you, Cathay. You know, when thinking about how to maybe start my remarks, I kind of thought back to a quote I ran across many, many years ago, and it goes something like this. Never were there so many opportunities in agriculture as now. Neither socially nor economically is agriculture on the decline. It is only changing. It might come as a surprise to know that these words were written by Liberty Hyde Bailey more than 100 years ago. 100 years ago, in his book called Vocations. You know, like then, agriculture is certainly changing today, and I think it's perhaps changing at a faster pace and at more levels than many of us are even thinking about or even can comprehend. So as I think about the areas of focus, on one hand, you know, we've heard reference to feeding a larger population around the world. We're going to need to continue to foster policies that allow our commercial agriculture to fully employ the most advanced technologies and production practices available. We also need to continue to focus on those negotiations to expand trade and improve access to global markets, perhaps more important today than at any time before. But one of the keys to the importance of the technology and new production practices is transparency. You know, we have to keep our public and consumers informed of what we're doing. It's not enough to just tell them what we're doing. We need to tell them, explain to them why we're doing it and the impact that that may have on our food production. At the same time, I think we're also in the very early stages of some broader national conversations relating to food shift, policies at all levels of government that are aimed at promoting the growth of urban agriculture. That's now a part of our agriculture industry as well. There's also some discussion, lots of discussion, around which the public desires social values to be reflected in our food production policies. How our policymakers or the public, when these policies are brought forward through a ballot initiative, are addressed, will certainly have a lasting and profound impact on what our food production systems will look like 10, 20, and 50 years into the future. I think there's no doubt that Liberty Hyde Bailey got it right when he said agriculture was changing. If only he knew how right he was, and we're here today to see what we're talking about.
Our next panelist is Kammy Schuppe. She's the co-owner of Schuppe Hay Farms in northeastern Colorado. She gets 2 microphones, apparently. Okay.
I'm going to come at this from the eyes of the family farm, because the question was, what do you see over the next 10 years? And I am married to a 4th-generation farmer. My husband's great-grandfather came to this country from Russia. They established in northeast Colorado, and our granddaughter was just born. She'll be the 6th generation raised on that farm. So I'm going to come at it from that aspect. In the next 10 years, I see a couple of things where the family farm is concerned. I have a concern because we have seen farm, and I think I'm going to use a quote that I heard. The Farm Journal did a legacy project, and they're still doing it. And they used a quote that said over the next 20 years, 70% of the agricultural land is going to change hands. That's a transfer of wealth. I'm not convinced that the family farmers in a large percentage are prepared for that transfer of wealth. So my concern for the family farm is that when this transfer of wealth happens, when grandma passes on or mom and dad move on, that they're prepared to not lose that land, to be able to take that legacy and have it be there for their children and their grandchildren. So that's number one for me on the family farm. And I'm seeing that start to happen, but it's a discussion that sometimes leads to families needing their priest and their counselor and their accountant and their banker in the room to discuss it. But it needs to be discussed because you don't want to lose, we've heard this talked about, that there's going to be consolidation, and I think that's true. From my perspective, I don't want to see our family farm that's been there for generations and generations go anywhere. I want to see us be in this industry, and I want to see us continue to be competitive and to be able to do what we love. We farm because we love the land. We farm because we love what we do. My son is a farmer. My granddaughter, she's one. She doesn't know how much she loves farming yet, but she does. But what I want to see is I want to see the family farm prepare for that kind of transfer of wealth. I also want to say that in the family farm realm, I think that the family farm can't be what it used to be. When my husband and I first started farming when we were first married, I won't tell you how long ago that was, every kid would graduate and he could go buy his own farm. And then he'd buy some equipment. He might rent a piece of equipment. They can't do that anymore. It's not feasible. It's not financially feasible. So you have to prepare to absorb another family. We have our son and our daughter-in-law work for us on the farm. So I want to be able to do that. And so thinking that a farm has more than one revenue stream is one of the things we've adopted. So we look between 6 to 10 revenue streams to keep us operating. On the family farm, you're not going to be making money in every revenue stream every year. But if you have more than one revenue stream, you have the ability to keep everybody going and keep everybody engaged. So that's my 2 cents on that. I would like to think, my husband says that you can't hire an employee like you could raise a child. Our son was raised on the farm. He knows the smell and the taste of the dirt. And when we talk about, I heard the labor force being mentioned earlier, we've hired employees, and you just can't hire a kid who was raised on a farm. You can't hire him out of the workforce. It's something that they learn. It's instinctive. So I'd like to see the family farm continue for that reason, as well as all these others.
Okay, thank you. Full disclosure, Kammy is my daughter. I have to say that. I've been full disclosuring her root canal. I should full disclosure that. So our next panelist is Carlos Saviani. Carlos is the Vice President for Animal Protein with the World Wildlife Fund. Carlos?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Friends still asking me what you are doing in working for WWF. You are not an environmentalist, and I've been working for the private sector my whole life. I started as a rancher, and then worked, in sales, marketing for companies like Pfizer, Mariel, and ABS. I'm an animal scientist by training. But I think we should all be environmentalists, especially after you read, this report that WWF publishes every 2 years, the Living Planet Report, which is available in our website. And it has a lot of science behind. This is just the executive summary. The full report has like 150 pages, and it's done with other organizations like the Global Footprint Network, and it measures the human impacts on the planet. And one index, that is very alarming is that, we have been talking about natural resources, is that we use already 1.5 times what the Earth can replenish in natural resources. And the way things are going, with all the trends that we are talking about, we are moving to 2 planets in the next, 25 years. And I don't know if NASA has any advancements in their programs. I don't think so. We have another planet yet at our disposal, do we? So we really need to be concerned about how we're going to be supplying, the needs of a growing population without destroying the planet. Another data that is very alarming coming out of this report that serves almost as a barometer of our pressure on the environment is the Living Planet Index that measures the populations of all vertebrate species in the planet. And we managed to decrease those populations of all vertebrate species. We're talking about fish, mammals, reptiles, all of them. We reduced them by 52% since 1970. 52%, so more than half. And we are concerned about that, not only because we love those species, but because, it shows, what we are doing to the planet, to the natural resources that we depend upon. So we have been working, WWF have been working for a few years now on food sustainability because, we believe that food is one of the biggest, threats and to the environment, but also consumes a lot of natural resources. And we work together with companies and a lot with industries as well. For instance, we are members of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Cameron, the president of the Roundtable, is here. And we work with a lot of other industries in trying to first define what food sustainability is. So what's food sustainability? It's a very difficult question. It's not only about greenhouse gases, not only about water. It's also about social and economic, impacts. And we need to have an answer for that. And we then need to define, and we are doing that together with those companies and industries, what are the indicators, what are the metrics that we're going to use, to measure that sustainability and how we're going to improve that sustainability. One low-hanging fruit, that I would like to see us discussing here today is waste, food waste, because it's something that I think we all agree that should be tackled. And we waste today, and this data just came out of FAO, we waste 1.3 billion tons of food every year on the planet, and 40% of all the food produced in the U.S. is wasted. And we are talking about a cost of $162 billion, $162 billion that we are just wasting, throwing away. So we must better find a better way to deal with that. And to Bob's point, we have to do more with less, but also we have to reduce waste. And we're going to need innovation for sure, moving forward. In order to tackle those issues, we're going to need lots of innovation, and I'm glad to see that we are here discussing it.
Thank you, Carlos. Our next panelist is Steve Hoffman, who is the Managing Director for Compass Natural LLC. Steve?
Hello, everyone, and thank you to Colorado State University, the Van Heist Group, and the producers here for inviting me to speak. My background is as an entomologist with a master's degree from Penn State University. I've worked in conventional agriculture and actually now specialize in organic and regenerative food and farming, as Alan Lewis mentioned, and I do communications in that. I would posit to you that the innovation in regenerative, sustainable, organic agriculture starts in the soil and ends on the shelf with consumer transparency. It is one of the most transparent food production systems from seed to the label. Check it out. You can check out Organic Trade Association at ota.com. It's an amazing resource for food producers taking a look at organic. I do want to talk about from the soil. We have 6 inches of topsoil. And a lot of that is blowing away. A lot of it is eroding because in mainstream agriculture, we don't rebuild the soil. We tend to deplete it, and then we rely heavily on synthetic ammonium nitrate fertilizer that's derived from natural gas, which actually creates the runoff. You folks familiar with the water pollution, the drinking water pollution that happened in Lake Erie last year that affected an entire community's water supply? Agricultural runoff from nitrogen fertilizer. It creates the dead zones all around the planet that actually impacts fishery industries to the tunes of billions of dollars. So one industry impacts another industry. Actually, mainstream conventional agriculture is one of the largest non-point sources of environmental impact and pollution in our world. So I challenge agriculture today to focus innovation not just on maximizing food production and actually squeezing blood from our earthly rock, but, as Carlos mentioned, really doing something about all the waste in our system. And also, I want to go back to our soils. Our depleted soils release carbon into the atmosphere. Conventional agriculture is responsible for 1/3 of all greenhouse gases. Interestingly enough, according to the Rodale Institute, and that is another resource, rodaleinstitute.org, they've done 30-year continuous trials, and what they've found is that organic agriculture, because they rebuild the soil and put organic matter back into the soil, it actually sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere, puts it into the soil, and could actually neutralize 100% of our carbon emissions. If you don't believe me, go to rodaleinstitute.org or go to my blog, compassnatural.com/blog, and you will see this research. Any of this data that I'm pointing out to you today, I can back with full peer-reviewed research. We see yields, actually. Now, organic, again, ties carbon in the soil. So organic agriculture, believe it or not, is a low-cost solution to global warming. But I liken it more to open source like Linux versus patented agriculture, which is what we are looking at today. It's all about the patents. Yields are very comparable today in organic and conventional, especially when we're looking at increasing extreme weather conditions. According to Rodale Institute, healthy organic soils full of organic matter percolate water better in flood and hold water better in drought. That's very important as we see what's going on, and agriculture uses 80% of our water resources. GMO agriculture right now, they promise us a lot for the future, but in the past 20 years, GMO agriculture has really just been a delivery system for an increasing amount of toxic synthetic pesticides and chemicals in our environment. These chemicals usage has increased over 400 million pounds compared to conventional agriculture in the last 20 years since GMO agriculture has been introduced. And please understand that the top 5 pesticide companies in the world also, since they've introduced GMO agriculture, and it's in 80% of our conventional grocery products, GMO ingredients, have also bought up 90% of the world's seed companies. So rather than increasing biodiversity, I posit to you that GMO agriculture is actually narrowing biodiversity. When we hear that there's consensus on safety about GMOs, that is absolutely a trope, and I challenge you to look at that as well, because frankly, the jury is out in terms of peer-reviewed research on the safety of GMOs in terms of its increased pesticide usage, and actually that these toxins are getting into fetuses and pregnant moms' blood, according to researchers at the University of Sherbrooke Medical Hospital in Quebec, who did peer-reviewed, honest science work. But that's very challenged. If we actually could see investments in organic agriculture and innovations in that on a scale that we see in mainstream agriculture, I think you would see that we can learn from each other truly sustainable systems that are more conservation-minded. My closing comment is about transparency. We have 36 pesticide and mainstream food companies that have invested over $100 million in the last 4 years to defeat GMO labeling bills in California, in Washington State, in Oregon, and in Colorado. Now, while I'm not in favor of a patchwork of state laws, it is the road toward federal mandatory labeling because that's what the consumer wants. If we are going to put untested technology where it becomes the dominant system in our agriculture and then deny the consumer the right to know how their food is made, and I mean put it on the label, then your consumers are rejecting that increasingly. Do you know sales of non-GMO labeled products and organic products have grown 173% in the last 5 years at Whole Foods Market alone? Alan Lewis can tell you more about that. That is the consumer telling us as producers what they want, and what they want is transparency, and it is our responsibility to give them that transparency. If you're going to stand behind GMOs, why do you keep it off the label? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Our next panelist is James Pritchett, who is the Assistant Vice President for Engagement at Carter State, and works with me.
Thanks, Cathay. You know, I was just thinking a little bit as they posed this question to me about the next 10 years in agriculture. What sort of tools do we need in our toolkit in order to be successful, to adopt innovations that make a difference according to the values that a lot of folks have expressed here? And one thing that I think is true is that we'll begin to, as agriculturalists, manage more soft assets, or more intensively manage soft assets, people and relationships, as much as we do our hard assets, some of the capital that we've had before. So I think one of the growth opportunities for us as we think about agriculture in the next 5 to 10 years is being able to develop a calibrated eyeball for talent in our organizations, and be able to invest in that talent, not be afraid that we're going to lose that talent. I think that'll be really important to us. I think what's also true is as you develop an innovative idea or an innovative mindset, you're going to have to find new streams of capital to come back into the organization. Perhaps our history and our tradition in agriculture is to grow and to advance based on profits that come back to the organization. But now we're going to have to find different kinds of funding streams to be able to take on the types of investments that are necessary in order for us to be successful. So I think those are two things that are really important. If you think about our purpose today, one of the things that's of paramount significance is being able to develop a knowledge network in an agricultural organization, whether that be within the organization itself or being able to tap outside stakeholders and then be able to gather information and then decide how to use that information as best we can. So developing that knowledge network is really important. And finally, when a great idea takes hold and we start small and we start to grow, one of the challenges that we'll face is how do we translate something that works in the small to something that works in the large without losing the processes and the innovation that brought us there in the first place. So I think all of those tools we need to put into our toolkit, and it's something that we can invest in the next 5 to 10 years.
Thanks, James. Our next panelist is Cindy Haren. Cindy is the president and CEO of Western Dairy Association.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Can you all hear me? Okay, so I work for dairy farm families in Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. And the thing that I've learned over time is our dairy farmers, just because they're in Colorado, doesn't mean that they aren't globally connected. We don't export a lot here in Colorado. We would through probably like Leprino Foods. But the way that they conduct their business is very much globally connected. That dairy farm really is a part of a whole sustainable community. It's not just about that farm, it's about the water system, it's about the energy system, about the natural resources system, and it's also about the consumer, and it's about the people in that community. So our farmers are very concerned about their whole community and sustainability. You know, for the past 50 years, dairy farmers have been part of innovation and making a lot of improvements. And in fact, if you compare 50 years to today, our dairy farmers in the United States are producing an additional 280 pounds of milk, but with less cows. They put together in 2008 what is called the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, and it was really kind of stirring the pot, bringing all the different diverse conversations together, because we all have values that are very similar, and that's what we found out is we needed everybody at the table to sit down and talk so that we could figure out how to solve these challenges. Our dairy farmers, you know, challenges really the top four. It's about access to skilled labor force. It's about access to feed and water, you know, high quality. Dairy cows are a very sensitive animal, and they need very high quality food and water. And it's also about the increasing economics of the business of dairy farming. You know, how can you continue to afford the innovation that they know that they need? Well, the consumer is really the bottom line for all of us, and farming is really not familiar to today's consumer. And in fact, 73% of consumers say that they care about sustainable agricultural practices. When we look at milk drinkers, okay, 44% of those frequent milk drinkers said that they are very interested in environmentally friendly milk. So, you know, those things, the consumer is so important to us in what they think. And it's about not only innovation on the farm, but it's also innovation about being able to create new products, new food that our consumers want, when they want, where they want it, and how they want it. Here recently, I was in Washington, D.C. At the Washington Post, and they have a series called The Future of Food. If you all have an opportunity, go to their website, and I think that you can hear some of the past discussions. But during that session, former U.S. Secretary Dan Glickman said, something we need to think about is this. The issue is not how we will produce enough food by 2050, rather, how will the world feed itself? So in other words, how will the planet, how the planet can feed itself versus how we feed, you know, 9 billion people. You know, soil health, climate change, water resources, human nutrition and health and the gap in the United States that we have in science and research is very real, and we have to deal with that. He said the U.S. has a serious gap in science, especially around the resistance, so drought resistant, pest resistant. That impacts all of us, not just as dairy farmers, but all of ag. And so how do we, keep up this business of innovation and science and research that we need? So when dairy farmers think about their business, they are a 24/7 business. They never shut down, and it really is about that whole sustainability, that whole community. It's every system. If one thing goes wrong, it affects, that whole system. Today, we know that our dairy community as a whole, the whole value chain, that it is using 90% less land, 65% less water, produces 75% less manure, and has a 63% smaller carbon footprint per gallon of milk than it did 50 years ago. A lot of this information that I would like for you to go to is on usdairy.com, and it's part of the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy that dairy farmers in the whole United States brought 200 companies together to try to help solve these problems. That's where a lot of the science that you'll find that I'll be referencing through the rest of this conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. And Cindy is also on one of our panels in the next couple days. Our next panelist is T. Wright Dickinson, and T. Wright is the partner in Vermilion Ranch. T. Wright's wearing two hats today for me because Terry Fankhauser couldn't be here, so he's also wearing the Colorado Cattleman hat. But T. Wright works a lot in habitat exchange. So T. Wright?
Cathay, thank you very much for the opportunity. As a participant last summer in the Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper's conference on innovation in Colorado, and remarking to Cathay the need to highlight the innovation that is Colorado agriculture, and agriculture is an essential industry in this state. Cathay said, "We've got it. CSU, we're going to do it." And thank you all for doing just this. As a member and have been in the leadership of the oldest cattlemen's organization in the nation, what we hope and what we believe will happen is we are going to complete the paradigm shift that has been very needed between the conservation community and agriculture. We have had seemingly a 50-year association built around seemingly conflicting viewpoints from the start of our major environmental legislation in the 70s. And yet what is emerging and what I'm most excited about is the acknowledgement of the true partnership between the conservation community and agriculture. When the Colorado Cattlemen's Association is partnering with Environmental Defense in the creation of the Colorado Habitat Exchange, when we are sitting down and having conversations with World Wildlife Fund, when they have chosen to hire folks like Carlos and Nancy Lab, that speaks to agriculture, and that conversation that we have more in common than we have in differences, and the fact that we will actually recognize in a true partnership fashion how we can in fact accomplish so many of the goals that have been talked around at this table. It has never been lost on me that what we have attached a monetary value to, we have, and what we have not attached a value to is of scarcity. And so what we are doing in Colorado with the partnership of the state and the governor, Parks and Wildlife, oil and gas industry in Colorado, as well as environmental defense, is creating a market-based mechanism to take ecosystem service in the form of species conservation and incentivizing agriculture, which is everywhere in the conversation that we're having, as a true partner in mitigating the impacts that various industries will have on the environment, and doing it in such a way in our past practices. What we have done is mitigate after the fact, when in fact we need to be buffering in advance of the impact. And this mechanism that the platform that we are creating, while right now it is focused on sage grouse and mule deer in Colorado, our intention in agriculture is to have it multifaceted for nutrient trading, any one of the ecological services that agriculture is very capable of providing for society, and creating that market-based mechanism that brings conservation forward in an actual uplift and in an outcome-based way, while at the same time creating the revenue streams that Kammy talked about in such a way that we deliver the services in a more effective manner. At least from my perspective, when I look at the issue like the fact that we have some 1,000 species where there have been court decisions indicating that a decision needs to be made on whether or not those species should be listed, what it speaks to me is that we've had a colossal breakdown in a regulatory approach to conservation, and that it is not working. And our members and our leadership believes that a market-based mechanism to conservation will create both conservation and the efficiencies and the true partnership between conservation and agriculture that the country deserves. And we're happy to be part of this, Kathy.
Excellent. Right. Thank you. Our next panelist is Kelly Leid. Kelly is the Executive Director for the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative from the Mayor's Office in the City of Denver. Kelly?
Great. Thank you. As a third-generation Colorado kid, it is a great honor to be a part of this panel discussion. I come today really to talk about the urban perspective. Clear signals are emerging of a renewed interest in where food comes from our urban cities across broad socioeconomic boundaries. From families to schools to business leaders to elected officials, we are all more aware of the importance of eating better, rediscovering our interest in where food comes from, and engaging more directly in our food choices. This runs a gamut from school gardens, community food co-ops, farmers markets, and a growing list of aquaponic and hydroponic facilities in our facilities. Cities like Denver are booming, capturing an increasingly global position in shaping our world, especially around collaborative work and learning environments across a spectrum of industries. In particular, this new kind of entrepreneurial energy is being driven by the millennials, who crave the robustness and diversity of a large city, but at the same time desire more direct control over their lives, which includes, among other things, their food choices. On a global scale, obviously one of our biggest challenges, and we've all talked about it, is how are we going to feed 9 billion people? And the bulk of those people are going to live in our largest urban centers. Additionally, our natural resources like water are growing increasingly scarce, forcing us to explore crops that use less water while at the same time generating higher yields. Further, technology continues to play an increasingly important role in food production and safety, transforming traditional agricultural industries into high-tech, high-touch organizations that are globally connected. All these indicators suggest a unique convergence of factors that offer an opportunity to connect these factors into a new combination of aligned forces that can in fact help solve major social, political, environmental issues. One of the many ways Denver is approaching this opportunity is through the creation of a dynamic 240-acre National Western Center campus just north of downtown Denver that will bring together commerce, experiential learning, research, the arts, and entertainment. Denver, in partnership with Colorado State University, History Colorado, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and the Western Stock Show Association, are advancing a bold platform to train a new army of agricultural innovators, while at the same time celebrating the pioneering spirit of the American West annually through our National Western Stock Show. And to James' point, we talk about this knowledge network. where, you know, the goal of the center is to bring those knowledge networks together and to connect the dots. I mean, just between Denver and Fort Collins, we have hundreds of company, both traditional and new, around a broad spectrum of agricultural industries that are looking for a place to share ideas. And the center, the National Western Center, can serve as that purpose. Additionally, beyond just Denver, we're working collaboratively between CSU and our folks at Denver International Airport to take advantage of the thousands of acres out at the airport to expand, almost like at a wholesale level, the things we'll learn at the National Western to solve some of the biggest global food issues and take those to scale at the airport. The mayor is further moving groups like we have a Food Policy Council that the mayor has formed, as well as a series of executive orders that really put food at the center of solving some of our biggest issues in the city like Denver. So, you know, Denver is excited to re-engage in our heritage. As I love to say, as a third-generation Coloradoan, we spent 30 years running away from our cowtown mentality. Denver is back, and I have T-shirts that say it, "Embrace the cow." So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. Our next panelist is Cameron Bruett. Cameron is the head of corporate affairs, and he is the chief sustainability officer for JBS USA. He's also the president of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Cameron?
Thank you for having me. I embrace the cow. For those of you who may not know, JBS is a small family-owned company based in Brazil. We're those local family farmers you hear about. So the wonderful thing about being at the end of a round table is everybody's already said everything more articulately than you could possibly hope to convey. So let me take a little bit different tactic. No farmer in America wakes up in the morning and says, how do I pollute waters and streams? How do I poison women and children? How do I decimate the environment? Okay? Farmers and ranchers are the original stewards of the land, and they are more concerned with how do they pass on their generations of hard work to the next generation. If you look at cattlemen, the average age of the cattleman bill is 65, 68 years of age, which is fantastic for that group, but for those of us a wee bit younger, it gives us some concern, particularly when it comes to supply. And too often in this discussion about agricultural innovation, we pick winners and losers. We vilify one another. We say that one niche system is preferred over another, and we vilify traditional agriculture in favor of niche systems. And I think we need to stop doing that, okay? We're one agriculture, and we do have one awesome challenge before us. And I don't believe it's fear-mongering to say that feeding 9.5 billion people by 2050 will be a challenge, and doing so in a manner that preserves our precious natural resources for future generations to enjoy in the same manner, if not better than we do today. That is an awesome challenge, right? So I believe agriculture, all systems, can rise to meet that occasion. We're working on this through the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, as Carlos mentioned, in trying to define what the heck does sustainability mean, right? It's not just some environmental program. It does deal with rural communities, rural economies, rural families, their way of life, right? There's an incredible social pillar. There is a food safety, a food availability, a food affordability pillar as well. And yes, those engaged in business are in it to derive a profit for their efforts and make a return to their shareholders. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So sustainability is not simply an environmental outcome. It is a balance of those three pillars of social, environmental, and economic. So the challenge is, how do we scale up production in a way, Carlos mentioned we're already consuming 1 1/2 times the Earth's current resources. No one is flying to the moon to plant seeds or raise cattle. So we need to deal with the finite resources at our disposal today. And very importantly, when you talk about this 9.5 billion, here's the reality. 3 billion of that will be in middle-class growth, okay? Now, all of you Coloradans in the room, you all are dressed very nicely, have nice, fresh shoes on and wonderful outfits. You have good incomes, right? So if I gave you each $100 extra a week, your diet wouldn't change at all, right? But if I give $100 extra a week to a very poor person, what are they going to do with that money, right? Are they going to go out and buy a Cadillac? You know, that's what some of the brothers do. But generally, what will happen is they will improve their diet. They will consume more milk, eggs, and protein. So there is going to be an incredible demand for food products. So the reality is we need to empower people to do more with less and to do better on the land that they're on today. Not vilify people and tell them that you're destroying the planet, you're destroying the earth, but empower people to do better, to identify best management practices, spread those out as widely as possible, understand that we're going to have to tailor specific solutions for specific environments and specific regions, get away from this one-size-fits-all viewpoint of agriculture, and empower people to meet this challenge. And I have great confidence in American farmers and ranchers that they'll lead the charge on this effort.
Cameron, thank you. I got a note. People in the audience would like to tweet. It's #CSU_Ag Summit if you'd like to tweet out in the audience. Our next panelist is someone from Colorado State University. Steve Arnold is a veterinary student in what year?
Third year.
Third year.
Yeah.
So he's going to be working on your animals and working on your systems over there, Paul. He's with clinical studies in the College of Veterinary Medicine and Biological Science, and he's one of our consumers.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, everybody. I appreciate it. I am a vet student here. At my heart and soul, all I've ever been is a farm boy, and that's all I'll ever be. Don't let the thrift store sport coat fool you. And I will take that $100. I'm broke. But I really liked what Cameron had to say, because that's truly how I feel about farming. I have been fortunate enough to see many parts of agriculture, from backyard gardens to our hog and beef operation back in Illinois, to farms in New Zealand and Switzerland, and I've worked for large-scale commercial hog operations and run equipment for Dowsons in the fields across the Midwest. So, and I've loved it all because it's all farming. And I see so many strengths in across the board in agriculture. And I just feel like it's rooted in this truth about agriculture that my dad used to tell me, in that all of agriculture is dependent on two things, and that's the sun and the dirt. And I know it's more complicated than that, but Lord willing, the sun will keep shining. What we can deal with is our dirt. And rooted in our soil, no pun intended, sorry, is this idea that we need to produce more with what we have. And I know we can do this because I've helped to do this on my family farm, and that's we increased our beef load by 1/4 just by employing different grazing strategies, helping to enrich our soil through the way that we graze cattle. And then I go and I work for some big commercial operations, and I see that they, like Cameron said, they're not against small family farms. On the contrary, this hog operation I was working for was working with small family farms and returning that manure they're producing back to the soil as well. And so I'm really excited, and I think my favorite part about being a farmer is that we're problem solvers. And this is a huge problem. It's not a problem, it's many problems. And there are many ideas and many solutions for how we can move forward to help the world to feed itself. I really liked that quote. That was incredible. Help the world to feed itself. And I think that, like Cameron said, I feel like he said everything I need to say. We need to realize that it is a diverse field, and not one thing is going to work everywhere. And be willing to have that open mind, and to understand that maybe we try something and maybe it doesn't work, but we're not in the business of telling people how to do things, and we have to be willing to accept changes ourselves and look for ways to better this magnificent field of agriculture.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So as we move on, one of the common themes I think you've all heard is big data and data itself. So our next panelist is Mary Kay Thatcher. Mary Kay is the Senior Director with Congressional Relations at the American Farm Bureau Federation. Mary Kay?
Thank you. Well, Cameron and I used to work together in Washington, and we didn't always agree on things when we were in Washington, but I do agree with several of the things he said, and one of them is that it's always good to go last because everything's been said. But I guess I would point out that I think that the conversation that I've heard does indicate that probably what I view as our biggest challenge is transparency with consumers and trying to do more talking with consumers in the future about what's going on. And that then I think leads to the second one, which Bill and others mentioned, which is regulations being a big threat to agriculture in the future. I don't think it's just regulations, unfortunately. I think Congress fits in there. But that transparency and that need for us to talk more with consumers, with individuals, I think if we do that successfully, will be helpful as we look at some of these regulations that are coming at us. So I do want to talk just a little bit about big data, and I think that, James, when you said it's a tool in the toolbox, that's true. I think it is going to be a big change for agriculture. We look at big data at Farm Bureau like it's the new biotechnology, and that indeed we can make, we will have as many changes in agriculture due to big data as we did via technology. I think because of that, because of reports of that you got like in the dairy industry and the productivity that they've had, because of all the changes we're making in agriculture, that we must have had at least 7 or 8 people around the table talk about the need to feed 9.5 billion people by 2050. I take the other viewpoint. I actually think we're going to have to think about what do we do with the surplus by 2050, because I think we will step up to the plate and easily be able to feed those folks in the next 20 years. So it will be a challenge. It won't be easy, but I think we will indeed rise to the occasion and more than succeed with that. The other point that I would make just very briefly about big data is that I think many folks tend to look at it as sort of a foregone conclusion in agriculture, and I think it is, although there is, I think, still a lot of fear, some intimidation out there about the use of big data from farmers and ranchers. I think when we get drones flying over our fields, there's going to be even more fear about that. Certainly, farmers are just about as excited about drone technology as anything I've seen in a long time, but as soon as EPA gets up there with one, it'll be a whole different story. So I think we do have sort of a paradigm shift going on with farmers and ranchers right now, because they've been used to sort of thinking they were out in the middle of nowhere and what they did was private. And with all the big data technology and with drones and other things coming in, that is far from the truth. But just to make a final point, I think we cannot view big data as a foregone conclusion, because I think there is still a lot of fear to be worked through in the industry. I look at one major manufacturer out there that a year or so ago wanted to charge farmers $15 an acre to take their data and write a prescription and give it back. And then a few months ago, that $15 an acre went to $3, and now it went for free. So I don't think you go from charging $15 an acre to free if indeed farmers are falling in line and fighting to give you their data. And so I think we have a tremendous amount of work to do. We've made some great progress between farmers and ranchers and between ag tech providers, but a long ways to go.
Okay. Our final panelist is Ron Dekok. Ron is the Business Development Director for North America with the Horticulture LED Solution from Philips Lighting.
Thank you. Thanks for having us here today. You know, I'm at the end here, and I've got all the darn time I need. So sit back. No, in all seriousness, as I was sitting here kind of listening to all the comments come across, you know, I'm looking at my nameplate in front here and as well, and there's a word on there. It's innovate. It's why we're here. And a definition of that is you know, to make changes in something established, especially through the introduction of new methods, ideas, or products. So we're here for a common reason. You know, again, the 2050 you know, target where 9.5 billion people are going to have to be fed. You know, traditional agriculture. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean agriculture that's been practiced up to today? You know, all the factors in terms of what we bring forth on a population scale, where, you know, in 1920, you know, 2 billion people were 10% of them lived in an urban environment. And the prediction by 2050 is that 70% are going to be living in an urban environment. There's pressure there in terms of the population growth, but also pressure in terms of how food's going to be produced. As we look as well to the value of the food production being brought forth to this population, people want to eat better. That's going to require more input. That's going to require better distribution. We've heard, through storage and distribution worldwide, potentially up to 40% of food is lost. You look at arable land, there's only a finite amount of land available. Probably 80% of that land already is in use. And I'd say a fair chunk of that has probably reached its peak and is probably on a downward spiral and needs additives, given to it to continue production. So when we look at aspects of how we're currently producing, whether it's been, genetic enhancements or yield increases, whether it's been, the types of cropping in terms of monoculture, or even the distribution and the need of different foods by different food groups, we're a global environment. I mean, we look at things now, and does it not only make sense if we are shipping, say, produce from California to Maine? What about when we're harvesting in Western Canada and shipping out to India? All of that impacts, and how are we doing this? And in the approach that we've taken, it's not only traditional agriculture and the innovations that need to happen there, but it's also the adjacent spaces and technology. I think in a lot of aspects, we've heard about drone and sensor technology and RFIDs. In the way that we've approached it as well is there is this new space that's coming as well, which is a technology space. And some of the focus that we have in place is where's the population? How can we get a food source to them close? How can we make it relevant to them in terms of where it is? How can we reduce the shipping parameters? How can we increase the storage aspects? All of these things that until recently probably were pipe dreams, but now are a reality where technology is really actually and practically putting these things into play. So our interest in ag as a whole is probably on a very much new frontier, complementary, I think, to the advances that continue throughout regular agriculture and traditional agriculture. So we're excited for the discussion.
Excellent. So one more time, hashtag CSU_Ag Summit. Would you join me in giving our panelists a round of applause, please? I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to turn this over to my partner, Ed Goodman. We've fed them lots of water. I'm sure you've all had beverages. So I think we'll move to the next stage, which is a quick break.
Well, first off, thank you very much. What a wonderful set of insights. Very exciting. I'm an eternal optimist, so I always think everything's going to be wonderful at the end. So I'm really counting on that from all of you for the future. We'd like to take a very short break. I think everyone probably needs that. So in 10 minutes, we'll be back, and we'll do some exciting ideation work to take a look at how some of this future might actually come to fruition. So see you back in 10 minutes. Well, terrific. Welcome back. Thanks for taking a real short break and actually doing that. That's fantastic. I'd like to add my thanks to all of you. What a wonderful set of perspectives that you have. The snapshots were amazing. Definitely exposed us to a whole number of opportunities and also some of the challenges that agriculture faces and its related industries face in the coming years. It really truly is an exciting time, I think, for agriculture when you look about and you think about it. And as so many of the folks have noted, it really is an amazing opportunity and an amazing challenge, as Cameron put it so eloquently, to think about this challenge of the future and how we might be able to go there. Really is an exciting time. There are so many connections and so many innovations that have been discussed that can help drive this new future, and certainly I'm extremely optimistic about what can come from this. And I think it's just wonderful that there are forums like this and audiences that would come to hear this that can help to drive a future that's so important to all of us. You know, while we've been talking so much about innovation, it occurred to me as I was sitting there that throughout most of the 20th century, however, I would say agriculture and many of its related industries have had more of a commodity-driven focus. heard a lot about commodities when we were listening. You know, I think food was talked about a lot as a commodity. And today, food is far more than a commodity. With the new consumerism and the technological innovation that have really brought us to this point of the 21st century, I think we're entering a completely new kind of an economy, what many would coin the experience economy. 21st century will be an economy of experiences in a very, very different way. Food is going to be viewed in growing numbers of people as not only a source of incredible health, but also truly as an experience in itself. It's not just something we eat anymore, it's something we experience. And as consumers, we're starting to make really important choices about the food and the things that relate to all of our lives. And we're going to see even more of that into the future. And that makes total sense, doesn't it? Because when you think about it, food, probably more than any product we ever would engage in, should be something that involves both the consumers and the producers in a very connected, personal, and memorable way. And that's what the experience economy is really all about. For those of you that may not be as familiar with this concept of the experience economy, it sounds like a new thing, and it is for many industries in the 21st century, but it literally began in 1955 with a young man at the time named Walt Disney, who created a place called Disneyland in 1955. You see, Disneyland wasn't an incremental improvement to an amusement park, to a Coney Island or a carnival that came to town. It was a completely new, transformed, experience-based place that was centered around a theme and an experience of connecting every guest to the happiest place on earth. Wasn't about rides and shows. It's about creating personal connections and memories. And that's what the experience economy is really about. And our connection to food and agriculture couldn't be more of an experience. Yeah, I can't imagine one that's even more important than that. I'm doing a lot of work with healthcare right now, and they're faced with a giant transformation as well. As you might guess, they need a transformation. The healthcare experience has been pretty terrible in many ways. Think about going to an emergency room or a visit to the hospital. Those industries have been focused in the past on being medical treatment providers. You come there because you're sick or injured, and you get a medical treatment. And the more forward-thinking healthcare organizations who are moving to the experience economy are moving to a very different place. They're understanding that if there's any hope for healthcare to improve, they need to be in the personal life aspiration business. Not just medical treatment providers. They need to help each person to live their highest, best, most healthy, and aspirational life possible if they're going to improve population health. So I see, listening to all of you, an unbelievable opportunity here for the agriculture community and all its related industries to make a transformation from sort of where we've been to this future place that we're all kind of hearing about. And so it was really kind of Cathay to ask me to help facilitate this part of the roundtable and to get these discussions going, to use some creative strategy and some spiral thinking techniques to really help us to look at the future in new ways, to push ideas into new realms, to use our imagination to identify these new opportunities, and ultimately to map an executable path that can take us to this new future. And we won't get that all done in this hour, but we can craft some new ideas, I think, today. And so we're going to want to do some spiral thinking together, both with the panel here, and I probably will engage you as well in the audience to help as well in this endeavor. And we're going to engage some thinking around how can we think about moving out into the year 2025 and beyond, and how can we make connections with consumers in ways so they can be a partner to agriculture and to this new future. I'll be asking you a couple different questions. I'll start with the panel, and then I may engage the audience in this as well. And the first part of this phase, we're going to be trying to create as many ideas as we possibly can in the shortest period of time we can. So I'll be posing some questions, and we'll be creating ideas almost like speed dating. We're going to throw them out as fast as we can think of them. We're not going to explain them in any detail. We're going to give a few word description of our concept and idea, and our wonderful scribes are going to put them all down. And we're going to try to create as many ideas as we can, and we're not going to judge any of them. It's going to be really important that we put all the ideas down and create as many as we can. And by doing this, some of the most creative institutions in the world have discovered that they gain very new perspectives through this process. They're able to craft unusual approaches. Sometimes the craziest ideas spur on something amazing that happens. That's how healthcare got from I'm a medical treatment business to I'm the life aspiration place. You can imagine, we used to design a hospital. Now I'm designing life centers. Very different places, right? So we're going to put these ideas out, and we're not going to judge them. We're going to go around. We're just going to throw them out as people get them. Start with the panel, and then I'll also ask you, if you have an idea, to put your hand up, and we'll call on you, and we'll develop as many ideas as we possibly can in a short period of time. Later on, I would ask you to think about the ideas you've heard. I would ask you to sort and filter them, to add a dose of common sense, some research, some education, a little bit of reality, some innovation, a little dose of that, and put it all together and find the very best ideas. Begin to move those forward. Look for connections. How might you all work together? How do the consumers and the businesses become partners? How do we create a different world so that this future food and agriculture situation becomes everything that we want it to be? So in the two-part question, we'll focus first on ag industries and all the collective industries that are connected with agriculture. And we'll look at their roles in engaging consumers as partners. Then after we've done that for a little while, we're going to flip the coin around, and we're all going to get to put our consumer hats on. And we're going to take a different approach, and we're going to imagine how consumers can, what consumers can do to do a better job of connecting to the world of agriculture and becoming an advocate for the world of agriculture. That makes sense? Any questions so far? Okay, great. So let's begin to look ahead for this next few minutes. And as I said, to 2025, so look out at least 10 years, 10 to 20 years. I hate to think of looking further than that. 2050 seems ridiculous to me. You know, I'm a futurist, but that's too far. But 10 to 20, we can sort of think about that. In the next 10 to 20 years and beyond, we're not necessarily going to ignore our present circumstances and the situations that we've heard up here today, but instead, for the next few minutes, we're going to take a leap of belief, a proactive leap ahead, and imagine a thriving, successful, optimistic future for agriculture that can feed the world, that we talked about, help to restore and regenerate our environments, heard a lot about that, bring innovations into reality, what might those be, create economic benefit, and ultimately connect our consumers as an active partner within the breadth of the industry. So let's start with the agricultural perspective. Here's the question. Start with the panelists. And as you get an idea, throw your hand up and we're going to throw them out, okay? And Paula's going to write them down as fast as she can, okay? Let's go for hundreds. In the next 15 minutes, I hope we have hundreds of ideas around this question, okay? You guys are really smart, maybe thousands, I don't know, but let's go for hundreds, okay? What can the collective of the agricultural community do to create a positive, connected partnership with consumers This future that creates an experience worthy of loyalty, trust, and one that's worth paying for. In other words, think of all the ideas you can that will help consumers have a great and connected experience with you, the food you produce, and the industries you represent. Make sense? Yes, Trudy.
Let's get her a mic, please. 2 mics for every woman.
I want 2 mics. One thing that occurs to me is, as I listen, is coexistence between our producers, those of us who love organic, those of us who appreciate GMO. That if farmers target each other and attack each other, it hurts confidence in the consumer.
Okay, great. Coexistence between our partners. And remember, short couple-word answers is even better because we're going for hundreds. Paul?
Yes, I think communication is a big one. Growing up on a farm and an older demographic running our farms, they're very direct and to the point and don't resonate with the consumer out there. So I think social media and communication.
Social media communication, wonderful. Kent?
Better education.
Better education regarding the fallacies of agriculture, okay?
Hands-on experiences, getting people to the farms.
Hands-on experiences to get people to the farms. Wow, that sounds great. Yes, Bill?
To that point there, I think that producers need to start developing into their business model a piece of that is outreach oriented.
Okay.
No disrespect to my cohorts,
Yep.
but I think a boots on the ground farmer or rancher, the story they have to tell resonates much better with the consuming public than if I say exactly the same words.
Boots on the ground connections with the consumers. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Alex?
Diversity, the understanding there's not just one solution that's going to fit.
Understanding there's a diversity of solutions, not just one. Yes, Steve?
Truth in labeling.
Truth in labeling. Truth in labeling, absolutely. Tom?
I think we need to recognize that our retailers, farmers markets, and CSAs are a natural conduit to our consumers, and we need to find ways to do more with identifying where the food comes from and use those venues to help communicate to the consumers.
Very good. Man, are they ever popular. Yes,
that
absolutely.
ties with traceability systems.
Traceability systems. Yeah, I'd like an app that I can point at my food in the store and learn the story of who produced it personally. That's what I'd like.
I think
Kelly?
the ability for the industry to see consumers not as passive receivers, but as active participants in the conversation. So instead of talking to them, you're talking with them.
Talking with them, yes, absolutely.
Ed,
Active conduits.
let's make sure we grab the mics for folks.
Part of that's also about connecting with their values and letting them know that you both have the same values that you share.
Okay, yeah, connecting with consumer values and shared value systems. T. Wright, I think you had something?
Yeah, Ed, I'm with you. I want an app for conservation, but what I want to know is, are you willing to pay for that app, for that information
Sure.
you want?
I am. I am willing to pay for that app. An app for conservation, absolutely. Yes, Thad?
Start with the kids. So engage more kids. We think only in terms of kids that grow up on farms as having agribusiness careers. No, there are a lot of great careers in agribusiness that kids from cities should be aware of. Start
Right,
with
and
kids.
they're disconnected, right?
They're disconnected.
Kids are disconnected, so we need to get them engaged, right? Especially if they're urban kids, right?
We need to have a balanced dialogue. So if we're going to show Food Inc. in high schools to these kids, we need to show the other perspective.
Yes.
And we have to engage in a conversation. As Kelly said, it's not just telling your story and it washes over them and they become converts. You have to engage in a dialogue and address their concerns.
Yeah, one of the things I'm seeing a lot in schools is kid gardens, right? I mean, they're doing it and bringing it and doing all that. Yes, sir, Alan.
Really completely acknowledge, embrace, and account for the external costs to the environment, human health, and communities.
Very good, very good, very good.
Ron?
Yes, Ron.
I think as well have the production follow the population. So urban production, not only for the fact of making it relevant for them, but as well helping to solve some of the issues of food shortage.
Urban production is a really big deal. Yeah, I recently just designed 2 small towns that are off the grid, and they're in urban environments, and they're going to create their own food. Very interesting. Yes, Kammy.
I was just going to add that I think this is an important step in that, but the value of agriculture It's been, I heard somebody say, disconnect between the consumer and the, the food just shows up in the grocery store. There's a value to what agriculture produces, and have the consumer understand that value, and have the producer know that they are of value, whatever
Yes.
that takes.
Yeah, there's oftentimes a very big disconnect between the consumer and the person actually creating it.
Correct.
They don't know each other.
No.
But that's your customer. If you're in the ag business, it's the end user, not wherever your product goes after you, it leaves your place. Yeah. Yes, Mark.
So not just food to table restaurants, but more venues for food to table so that we can have that experience that you talk about, whatever that may be.
More venues for food to table. That's terrific. How about something from the audience? Anyone? Yes, sir.
I like the idea of the world feeding itself. And a key idea that the panel brought up was how do we attract the talent for that to happen? That's the urban idea, moving things closer to where the food gets consumed, but it's also about creating a truly innovative marketing campaign that brings new people to that get excited about producing food that
Very
way.
good. Sir.
I think the urban and peri-urban agriculture projects provide high visibility and education opportunity for urban people about rural land use issues.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Panel, anybody else at the moment?
We got one back here.
Yes, sir.
So right now, in the world today, in the United States, we're growing 93 million acres of corn, producing 14 billion bushels of corn. And when you look at that 55% of it goes to animal feed and 40% of it goes into ethanol. When you look at food going forward, and we're going to increase the population to 9 billion or whatever the number is, how much more food would we have to produce? And is the world short of protein, or is the world short of carbohydrates? And if you look at it from the overall agricultural production of corn, as an example, the number of units produced is going like this, and the number of pounds of nitrogen required per bushel is going like that. And those are things that we ought to be celebrating. And that is a great story to be told. I know the World Wildlife Fund is working on projects like that. Environmental Defense Fund is working on projects like that. There is a lot of information available that can tell the story that we are making incremental improvements every year in the production of core commodities.
Very
And then
good.
the next component that hasn't been addressed here is when you look at what are the constraints moving forward to changing of agricultural processes. So when you look at it from an insurance standpoint, banking standpoint, I don't see anybody up here that's from the banking sector or the insurance sector and the agricultural sector, which are key determinants as to what are the changes of practices that you're going to conduct going forward.
Very good. Very good. Remember to keep them short if you can. No statements, just an idea, okay? Otherwise, I have to go back and front. Sir.
Nature has been putting together systems that work rather well for a very long time. And if we allow ourselves to be advised by how nature does that, we can build business systems that generate no waste, no toxins, lots of employment.
And natural mimicry is a big thing. Sir.
As both a consumer and a farm owner, I would like an app or something that could tell me about soil quality and what the impact of
Very
the
good.
ag system is on it.
Very good. Sir. You guys be ready. I'm coming back.
We might consider spending a little less time telling them how great we are and listening to the consumer.
Yeah, we ought to listen, right? That's probably a pretty good thing. In the back.
I think supporting infrastructure that promotes small farms. Small farms tend to be much more accessible to the consumer and the experience.
Very good. Infrastructure for small farms. Very good. Back to the panel. Stephen.
I think sort of common thread here has been education. So let's advertise transparency. Let's invite people. Let's get them to come and really reach out to the consumers and ask them to come and see our operations.
Absolutely. Yes, Cameron, have something to add to this?
Stop starving agricultural extension dollars at the federal and state level and reinvest in our school systems that educate the next generation of farmers.
Terrific. Terrific. That's important, isn't it? We've got to have a way to do that, don't we? Yes, Paul.
I think more events like Cuddle the Plains that get the folks from the city out into the farmlands.
Yeah, it's terrific, isn't it? Agritourism is a really big opportunity. We're not really promoting it very well. Could be a big thing. Sounds like we need the boots on the ground. Sounds like maybe we could have another revenue stream, as Kammy mentioned, as ag tourism people. Yeah, Alex.
Carlos mentioned this, but waste.
Waste.
Better and address better waste.
Yeah. Yeah, educate the consumers about that, right? Maybe not every apple can be perfectly red and with never a bruise. Sir.
And tackle the problems that are exposing us agriculture, on the bad side, like for instance manure. I think the dairy industry has a great example now, needs to be expanded, the use of biodigesters or nutrient separators, to produce, fertilizers.
Yes. Yes, Steve.
There's one example, and it's a French supermarket chain called Intermarché, and they are selling ugly produce at 30% less than the perfect-looking produce to help encourage people
awesome.
to not waste food.
That's awesome.
And that's something I think we could do more of in our country.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Ugly produce.
That's awesome. Did you have something, Bill?
Well, this might be drilling a little far in.
That's okay.
I think that it's all part of the overall message about the importance of agriculture. But to get specific, and it kind of goes to what T. Wright was talking about, agriculture plays a huge role in establishing habitat. And to Carlos's point that we've lost 50-some% of our species that we had in 1970, I think that agriculture is part of the solution.
Yeah. Well, agriculture as a habitat regenerator, restorer. Yeah, that'd be terrific, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing. Yes, Ron.
I think as well, recognizing from the consumer standpoint how much power they are having and will continue to have, and the fact that we in the agricultural field need to be able to react to that. Those things continue to happen on a shorter half-life every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Cynthia.
We need to keep innovating dairy food, or not just dairy foods, but foods in general that are really meeting the values of what consumers want, when they want it, where they want it. They're not sitting down at the table eating dinner anymore. That's only 4%. So, if they're on the go, grab and go, ensuring that everyone has access to that food, and it's not an elite attitude that only some people get this and other people don't.
Yeah, this idea of bringing healthy food everywhere, I think is a really, really great thing. T. Wright?
On the issue of waste, the recognition by local governments and health departments that they have a role in driving that waste stream and actually forcing food into the waste stream because of policy.
I agree. Steve?
I also think food producers could play a bigger role in more sustainable packaging. I think there's a lot of packaging and food that goes into the waste stream.
It's a lot of waste packaging, isn't there? A lot of waste packaging in the world. Yes, sir. Let's go back out here for a second. More or less subsidies. That's a good one. I like that one. Yes.
How about a specialized accelerator that will drop the cost and access to the new technologies we've been discussing?
Accelerators for technology, absolutely. That could be terrific. Yes. Wow, that's terrific. Yes.
Ed,
sir.
Ed, could you repeat them?
It's municipal composting to make sure that the waste can actually get reconnected back to farms and things like that. Yes, sir. Right, expand the consumerism point of view to include everyone, not just the elitist view, but everyone, even if they're food challenged, or that's not the right words. I forgot what you said. Food insecure, yes, that's a great way to say that. Sir?
Yes, it's called the Lands to Hands event. It's held each year at the Boulder County Fairgrounds in Longmont in February. Fourth graders are bussed in. They get to climb on a combine, climb on a tractor, learn how to set a siphon tube, learn where their food actually comes from. It's a great educational experience started by the Longmont Conservation District and Boulder Valley Conservation Districts, and we need to expand that more throughout the United States and do that in each local community.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Would you repeat that?
Say that loud at my mic.
Echo chamber, stakeholders functioning outside of their usual network to educate themselves in order to better serve consumers.
Okay.
Terrific, thank you. Terrific. Head back up to the panel for a minute. Yeah, Paul.
Kelly said a great point, I think, of what they're doing around DIA, and I think it would be great to get the schools around there involved so that the youth is actually the ones farming the land and not paid folks.
These demonstration kinds of communities can really make a big difference. Yes, Kelly.
I think building on the regulatory side, at the city level is zoning code that allows for an integration of farm and farm-related practices, which community current codes exclude.
Right, new zoning codes that allow agriculture to come into urban environments and not be restricted. Yeah, that's terrific. Yes, Carlos.
One simple solution, I mean, people get interacted with foods at supermarkets and restaurants, right? So training and educating and gaining hearts and minds of the clerk people, of chefs, of people that are dealing with consumers every day about food.
Very good, very good. Steve.
I would really like to see more dialogue between organic, regenerative agriculture producers and mainstream producers to actually really try to explore how we reduce the toxic pesticide load in our country, because even the United States Geological Survey's data shows that during the entire growing season throughout the entire Midwestern basin, we are breathing, eating, and drinking glyphosate, which is Roundup, because not just one farmer is using it, but all farmers are using it, and it's getting into our air, our water, in us. Same with neonicotinoid pesticides, and I'd really like to see the farmers talking to each other, because we are going to have a real issue with our bees and our pollinators very soon.
Okay, very good. Very good. Thad.
So far, we've mostly been focused on the U.S. and issues here, but the world population is not growing here, it's growing everywhere else. So it's really much more in terms of how do we link those farmers, smallholder farmers, and provide the capital that's required to get them to a commercial scale production.
Right, in the developing countries.
In the developing countries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where the populations are.
Linking capital and education and all the small
technology.
farming, technology, innovation. Yes, sir.
Speaking of data, making sure that information about sourcing and provenance flows all the way through the supply chain to the eaters.
Okay. One more, and then I'll go back here first. Actually, the mic's right here. I'll go here, and then I'll come to you. And then we're done.
How about growing crops for their flavor, not their transportability?
Wow, okay, love that. I'm all about the flavor.
I think someone on the panel said it earlier, but expanding the visual about the careers that are available in agriculture. It's not just driving a tractor, it's all the other things that you can do in a career in agriculture.
Wonderful. Well, that was awesome. We could keep going, couldn't we? We could go probably a whole day on this one topic, on the one question. But let's reframe now for a second. We were considering what agriculture can do and its related industries. Let's flip the perspective now for a second. Okay, and let's think about what the consumer can do. How can the consumer begin to create a much more vital connection to agriculture? What can consumers do to become advocates, loyal supporters? What can they do to help support this industry in the innovations that it needs to make coming to the future? How can consumers help to shape the experience? What can they be doing on their side, on the consumer side? And let's look to the future there just a little bit and imagine what consumers can do to help. What innovations might be possible also that could help consumers to become advocates for agriculture and the healthy future that we're all hoping for. Steve, remember, short answers, so we can get more.
If you want consumers to not be suspicious of food producers and big agriculture and understand innovation, then we need to practice responsible technology, and that is full transparency and labeling with new technologies. That includes GMOs, because right now consumers don't even know, they don't know what crops they are, they just know they're highly suspicious of GMOs, and you are not helping.
True. It's harder to flip the chair, apparently. Paul.
I like the use of technology and applications that where kids, because kids are all technologically advanced now, that they grow farms and do different things on applications as a game.
An application game where they actually get involved. That's a terrific idea. Yeah, Cynthia.
I'd really like, we say education, nobody has time for education, but starting with the kids in schools, that they are getting a good basic background about agriculture, production, and how they do connect up.
Okay. So it needs to start with kids and their background and understanding it and really getting a good background education on all of that. I want the consumers to own the waste issue they're responsible for. Personally, I mean, we throw a lot of food away. That's ridiculous, right? We need to know more about that. We need to have better ideas. Kelly.
I think along those lines, the issue of, because we have so much access as consumers to information, there is a shift in, there's personal accountability to one, doing your own homework, and two, you brought up a great point, is we're not, the ag industry isn't alone, and it's a two-sided coin.
It's a two-sided coin, isn't it?
And the consumer has to play a role in having some personal responsibility to help solve the problem as well.
Right. Yes, Alan.
Yeah, many consumers are able to understand that production systems that account for and eliminate external costs have more expensive food, and they're happy to pay that extra price in order to have a sustainable, regenerative system supporting their food.
Yep, you see that, definitely see that. There's definitely a market for it.
Secondly,
yes, okay, go ahead. I'll let you add another
consumers are opting out of being consumers, and they're becoming producers. And this is what we're seeing across Denver and in a number of food networks all across the world. We're producing our own food in ways that we find responsible, and then we're sharing it with our neighbors and recreating a kind of a democratic neighborhood environment.
Treat consumers equally, as opposed to creating products for the wealthy and the full stomach that can enjoy products with all these attributes. No one is deserving of food that's unsafe, that's unsustainable, that pollutes the environment. So let's treat all consumers equally, and then when we can command a premium based on other attributes we add on, Godspeed, I'm a capitalist, do it. But
right.
Let's give sustainable food to everyone.
Right, great dream there, no doubt about that.
And don't offload environmental costs to the poor and expect the rich to avoid those.
Yes, Paul.
I think stop pointing the finger. I just hear it even on the panel. We're one race, and that's the human race. We need to work together, and I think that's where consumers can help the agriculture business.
Right. They have to realize they're a partner, right?
I think you raise a good point there, that there are partners. And someone once always reminded me that, if you eat, you're a part of agriculture, and everybody eats, so everybody's part of agriculture. And how do we get consumers to kind of keep that in mind, that if they eat, they're part of ag?
Very good. In the back, yes.
I'd say non-biased media and science literacy.
Non-biased media and science literacy. In the far back?
I think of three things that I can do as a consumer. One is to plant a garden. The other one is to be willing to pay the true cost of food. And the other one I just forgot.
Harvest your garden well. Yeah, yes, sir. In the brown sweater.
I heard earlier that the majority of our residents are living in the urban area, and they're the ones who know the littlest about farming. It goes to education. I think some of these people who live in the big metropolis area need to get the full picture of what it takes to get the bread to the table or the steak. If you ask the average person, they go, well, gee, I'll just go to Safeways. And to them, there's the producer. To the average person is Safeways, not the cattleman or the farmer. So they need to be educated how it got to Safeways, not how it got to their table.
Right. Stories need to be told and stories need to be read. And experiences need to happen both directions, do they not, in order to make that happen? Yes, Phil.
I'd like to see all consumers think more globally. We were very focused on waste in the post-plate syndrome, but an awful lot of food never makes it to the plate. And that's in the U.S. and worldwide.
Right. Yes, sir.
We talk about education, educating our children, but we need to let our children educate us by hosting more hackathons, techathons, giving them the issue, let them generate the idea to bring to the producer and to their neighborhoods.
That's a great idea. Awesome. Sir.
Emphasize quality over quantity on the food. So the quality, that'll make them educate themselves even more, and it just opens up the transparency.
Right. Quality over quantity. We probably all eat too much. I could raise my hand on that one, I think. Trudy.
That reminds me of a question we haven't talked about, or a problem is childhood obesity. And a lot of people have quantities of food that are not good for them because they're cheap and inexpensive. They can afford them, and they're making them sick. So it's, I think, something I don't know how to address it. Everybody's working on it. There's a big article in the Denver Post yesterday, but how do we address that critical?
That goes back to kind of what Cameron was saying too, with
healthcare
good
issue.
quality food. It's not just quantity, it's quality and the right things. Mark, did you have one? Oh, Alan?
Yes, stop the trend towards massive consolidation and processing. Bring processing of grains and foods and storage and say canning back to the local and regional level where consumers can actually participate in it and have a better connection to it.
Okay, more of a localized viewpoint. Yeah, Stephen.
If those are the types of things we want to bring that stuff back to the community, the consumers are going to have to be willing to pay for that value added to that product. And so they have to be prepared for that.
Steve.
So, referring to the real cost of food, there is an excellent cover story in Time Magazine. Google it, Time Magazine, The Real Cost of Cheap Food. Everyone should read it.
There's a lot of education things to do, no doubt about it. Sir.
I'll pass along an idea of my wife's, which is also a bit of diet advice, which is don't buy or eat anything that's not absolutely delicious.
It's a really good idea. I met a lady on a plane the other day, and she's organized all the people who have, in her urban town, who have fruit trees. And they harvest all the fruit that those people can't eat and use it really, really well every year. Wow, I thought that was a cool idea. And that's all consumer driven. Instead of just letting all the apples and plums and cherries and everything fall on the ground because they couldn't eat them all, you just call them and they bring a volunteer group out, pick everything, give you what you want, and they take all the rest back and use it in production facilities to create wonderful food. I mean, there's lots of things we can do, right? Alan.
Kelly touched on this earlier, but remove these regulatory barriers to processing, cooking, and storing food in your own home safely so that there is a direct connection to the agricultural produce and the final product at the very local consumer level.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else out here? Yes. Very good. Consumers really need to speak up and tell all the grocers and everyone they get in contact, about the things that really matter and the things they really want. They really need to make that not just vote with their dollars, but in other ways as well. Yes, sir.
Leave their feedback and tell you how the zinc and iron levels are.
One more time, if you would.
We were talking about Disney and consumers loving to use social media. What if we give them a link on the back of the apple or the banana to go hop on and give us a taste, taste sample, or tell us how the zinc and iron levels are doing, and do you like this input here with the pesticide or with the biofertilizer or whatever? then we can better cater to their cry or their health needs, and that transparency that we all ask and want to see. They want that. They can create that themselves.
Wonderful. Yes.
I would say support the USDA's new movement to discuss sustainable dietary guidance from a consumer's perspective. If they're eating sustainably, then agriculture will then produce more sustainably.
Wonderful. How about in the back?
I think agriculture. Consumers can be advocates for agriculture by being personally responsible for their own water use.
Very good. Very good. Being personally responsible.
Can I participate?
Yes.
Do I get to participate?
You absolutely can.
Yeah, it's not something I normally do, you know. I actually think there needs to be an intentionality, and I think T. Wright touched on it. As local decisions get made and statewide decisions get made, agriculture is not in that conversation. Transportation systems are, water systems are, but the intentionality of your food is not in that conversation, and it needs to be there as those decisions get made.
Yeah, very good. I do a lot of work with millennials right now, and I can tell you they really care about this stuff. Okay, your next generation of consumers, well, they're very much more in tune than my generation was about that. We knew where it came from and how it got there, but we just took that for granted and consumed. But the new consumers, very different. They want to know who you are and what your story is if they're going to support you and be your advocate.
And they want direct access.
And they want direct access. That's very much true. So think about that. Ron.
I think, you know, tying in as well the power of the consumer with also the power of the retailer up front. So, you know, typically it's been a vertical down from producer to end user, but as an example, and kind of you know, jumping on that, Loblaws in Canada, well over $12 billion company, one of the largest food retailers up there, is also offering this misshapen, this bad fruit and vegetable, if you will, for up to 30% off. And that was consumer driven. So you're already seeing a retailer now taking that, you know, being a forefront, and you're going to see other avenues follow.
That's very good. I mentioned the hospitals that are switching to life centers. In these life centers, there's a healthy food performance kitchen in every lobby, right? And every one of the hospital guests has a personal opportunity to work with a nutritionist and a chef, you know, for their own particular, in their own budget, to eat healthy and have a diet at home, right? So there's lots of ways to connect that are different. And there's lots of partnerships and connections that can happen. Think wider than just your normal circle, and you might be shocked. I would get with healthcare if I were you guys, and I would, because they need to be transformed too. Yeah, very something. Yes, back here.
Teach our children and our grandchildren to cook using fresh ingredients.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
So I have a point that it's connected to that one. Gives more time, you know, for food experience. I mean, there are a lot of research showing that people are giving less and less time to the meals, and that's impacting what people are eating and the quality of food they are eating.
Very good, very good. Alan.
Yeah, I'm going to say, please take this as an important comment, because I'm trying to only give those, but there is a narrative being propagated that consumers are against agriculture, and that agriculture has to step up and confront consumers who are against agriculture. And I'd strongly encourage everyone to be suspicious of that and drop that point of view and that framing, because that's kind of based on some PETA people or some humane people, and they're as likely to attack JBS as they are natural grocers. 99% of consumers are fascinated by farmers, fascinated by agriculture, can't get enough information.
Yeah.
That's the framing we should embrace, not that consumers are against anyone up here.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
So I saw Mike move somewhere.
In the back.
This has been awesome. You're all to be commended for sitting up there and sharing your ideas and taking arrows, as it were. So what I'd like to offer you is embrace Gen X, Y, and Z, for they are right now the largest demographic on the planet, number one. Number two, they're the most connected and have the highest expectations for data, for knowledge, and for truth. And third point is they are going to innovate with or without the established infrastructure. And so what I would do, I would suggest we all embrace, every one of us, those three facts, and find ourselves comfortable with tension and comfortable with change, because they will break through what we call and. They will find nutrition, and it will be affordable, and they will not accept the false choice that you can either eat well, expensively, or you can eat poorly, cheaply. And I think we all have an opportunity to participate in that. I really do. And I'd encourage all of you to be as brave and courageous and as flexible as possible, because it's coming, and I think there's a place for everyone.
I'd like
We
to
have
make
time
a,
for
I'd
one or
like to
two
make a
last
comment on
comments.
that note, if I
Yes.
could. I want to kind of play off what he was just saying there. What we're talking about here is a huge topic, and you have lots of heads in this room that represent different things. And I think the key word that I keep going back to, and I've heard it several times, is value chain. Well, a strong chain has links. From my perspective, being on the family farm, my consumer is the dairy industry and the cattlemen and the feedlot industry. If I keep my link strong and I take into account the sustainability and doing my job and using the composting and doing the innovation and being good with my water and taking all of my parts, my link is strong. I can't control anybody else's link. I can control mine. So if we all walk into this place and we say this is a huge thing, but we all represent a part of the link, if we go home and we operate in integrity with our link, the agricultural industry will do its job without having to fight and point fingers. It will take care of itself if we all make sure that our link is strong.
Very true.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yes.
Because I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think information flow has been a challenge within the value chain before you even get to consumers. So generally the way it works is you'll get a demand from a retailer, which goes to a packer, which then goes to the feeder, which then goes to the producer, and the producer is never privy to those demands, just the next actor in the chain. So we have to be more transparent within our industry, and then understand the choices that we're making, and then have that communication with consumers as well, so that it's actually a dialogue and it's not a fiat down the chain.
Yes.
Right, right. Very good. Very, very good. I think our time is getting a little bit short. Was there one or two more that you wanted to take, or I just
nope.
Otherwise, we can't.
That was
It's
just
okay
a
with
test.
me. I can go all day. No. I think it's remarkable when you think of all the ideas. Imagine if we sorted and filtered all of these, and we spent some more time thinking about them. What if there were several days? What if each of you and each of you spend a day really thinking about your roles and how you could change this for 2025 and beyond, and what you could do? And as Kammy and Cameron said, you know, you took the personal responsibility to make a difference and to step up and to do your part to make agriculture's future really, really strong. Imagine where we could go. Imagine if we sorted these ideas and chose the very best ones, and then we looked for connections that connected consumers and the people of all the different industries, and even others that aren't represented here, as one gentleman mentioned, and our consumers, and we started to move those ideas forward. If we started to design a plan and a path to take those to the future, we could actually make them come true. Because what you can dream and imagine in your mind, if you can go there in an experiential way and actually craft the future in your mind so vividly that it's as if it's real, then you can actually make that come true. You can develop a process to take you to that spot. That's what a leap of belief is all about. That's what transformations are all about. And I think that's what this summit is really all about, is the ability to take the greatest ideas that come from the next several days and actually design a plan to move those forward so they can become the future. Kathy, is there something you'd like to add?
Just a summation. One of the things I think that T. Wright said is where you put your money is usually what you get, and where you don't put your money is usually what you don't get. So one person we have here, and I'd mentioned to you that all of these subjects and many of the people on these panels will be participating in the next day and a half. So you're going to hear more from these folks and have a, you know, I talked to someone here, we'd like to have a half an hour with each one of these folks because they carry such a very different background. But they're going to be at our summit in the next day and a half. But one thing I asked Peter to do is, from his perspective, having been the executive editor for Fortune magazine for a couple decades or plus, is to sit there and hear everything that he has heard, the consumer's partner, where that goes. And in the last I'm not going to give you much more than 5 minutes, but in the last 5 minutes, maybe to reflect on what he's heard that might be a possibility as we move forward. So, Peter, would you give us, if you would, just a few minutes, and then we'll let everybody move around till our next master class starts.
I'd be happy to. Is this on? It is on.
Yep, it is.
Well, first I want to thank Cathay and Ed. I'm not even in this industry, and I'm inspired. So I think you've done a terrific job and set a very nice tone for us to get started on. We didn't succeed in making the table round, but we did succeed at something else, which was, I think, I like to think of what happened in front of us today as kind of a mosaic of an industry. And my experience as a journalist, I spent about 20 years covering all kinds of technology and science. So everything from planetary science to Silicon Valley, nanotech to medical technology, industrial materials, you name it. And something I heard in this room, I would not have predicted, and it shows how naive I am coming from downtown Manhattan. This feels to me, what you've got here is a growth industry. And it's not just because you're growing stuff, but you've got a market that is 7 billion people strong now, and it's going to 9.5 billion. That seems pretty good to me. You've also got an incredible fount of new technology to play around with, most of which is going to be stupid and junk and will waste your money, but some of which is going to be great. And a happy market is a growing market that has new technology to play with. So the main thing I take away from this, and I'll get to the problems in a second because you've laid them out very nicely, is that the optimism in this room is comparable to what I experience in places like Silicon Valley, and it wouldn't have crossed my mind. So for what it's worth, it may be naive. You did a good job at presenting the challenges. The challenges, I just jotted down a few. Do more with less. That seems to be a refrain in this business. You've got climate change throwing a lot more risk into your projections than you've grown up with. Everybody knows that. We're all dealing with what some people have called the sixth extinction, which is species going extinct. And in very direct ways, landowners and farmers and raisers of cattle and animals bear the brunt of that and in a way get blamed for it, which isn't right. It's just happening. You have employee shortages, you have water problems, and then there's this certain problem that looms over us all that Carlos brought up, that we're operating our agriculture at 1.5 times the Earth's carrying capacity, and it's going up to 2 times, according to your analysis. Maybe the numbers are a little bit off, and nobody knows exactly when that comes home to roost, but that's the big shadow looming over this whole thing. In a few generations, the bill comes due, and we haven't really dealt with that yet. And I think everybody in this room is conscious of it. What's interesting to me is I don't hear any notes of impending collapse, famine. I don't think anybody in this room expects themselves or their children or their grandchildren ever to spend a hungry day in their lives. And that's really worth thinking about. There's a kind of built-in, call it optimism, call it maybe too much optimism, I don't know. But I just wanted to note that because there are places in the world where it's different. There were delightful surprises that I heard in the discussion, some big, some little. One of them that really captured me is the notion that data are worth money. In other words, if the federal government wants to collect your data, or if John Deere wants to collect your field data, they should be paying you. It's so obvious. And yet, the entire internet economy is built on the opposite premise that things like Google, Facebook, and so on get to collect people's personal data for free and make billions of dollars off of it. So there's a philosophical and economic problem deeply woven into new technology, and I think the fact that farmers have a chance to get it right is very important. That's worth thinking about. I was very gratified to hear that people love their cows and that they love their dirt. And I didn't hear anybody say that they love their plants, but I suppose you must. I love the idea of multiple revenue streams. I'd never thought of a farm that way, and it opens lots and lots of possibility, including agritourism, which is neat. The notion of 40% food waste. I think there are opportunities for everybody, consumers and producers, in that realm, which are kind of icky to think about, but really, really important. And the efficiency that will grow in meeting the needs of the world over the next decade or two will have a lot involved in cutting back on the amount of waste, I think. I like that everybody's upset about drones. I was surprised. And I wanted to ask, if there's a drone flying over your acreage, can you shoot it down? I mean, you know, if you're annoyed by it, just take out the shotgun and plug it, right? What would happen? I predict that will be tested in the courts within the next few years. I'd never thought of dairy as a source of rapid innovation, but then I thought about all the dairy training I've had just as a baby boomer through my whole life, like Elsie the cow and how it got milk, and some of the best marketing campaigns ever in the history of consumer goods has been dairy. So yes, but that was a revelation to me anyway. I think the really big idea that's interesting, and we kind of ended on this, so I won't spend any real time on it, is the notion of a generation shift going on. And I think there's something incredibly upsetting as a baby boomer for me to hear that, and smart about it, that it's not about the baby boomers anymore. It's not about the people most of you are baby boomers or even more. But it's about Gen X, Y, Z, and the millennials, and those folks, they're really picky eaters. They care about what they eat in ways that I was never trained to care. And I think it's going to have not just an impact on the domestic food industry, but on global culture because of America's outsized position in the world. There is lots of opportunity and lots of risk in that, and I think we're going to end up talking about that a lot in the next couple of days. And then finally, I just want to reiterate the idea that we all ended on, which is that everyone needs to really tend and nurture their link in the value chain. And that means communicating information more freely, while all the while keeping in mind that data and information have monetary value. It's not that you should ever give it away free, but secretiveness can cost you, and it can cost you in many ways. So I think it's, since we're in an information age, since big data and the technology are pushing us to reconsider our attitudes toward information, probably none of us is, or few of us are as sophisticated about it as we need to be. It bears a lot more thought and experimentation about what you share, when you share, what you expect back. There's a kind of exchange going on that's not monetary exchange necessarily, but it has a profound economic impact. And I think as we talk about the technologies, we're going to hear that bubble up again and again. So I think that's my list. I'm sure I missed a lot of great ideas. There were more than one could possibly keep track of. But welcome, everybody, and I look forward to mingling with you the next couple of days.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
So as we close out, I think one of the statements, and I will tell you that there's some intentionality in removing it, if you will, from some of the statements, which is we have to feed 9 billion people at a certain time. I think that says to you, and then what do? Are you done? I mean, once you fed them and you get to that 9 billion, are we done? I think what you've heard today is we're not done, and I think what you hear around the table are how we're going to continue past that. I won't be there to see if we succeed, because I'm one of those, who said over 60, what did he say, something? I don't know, it hurt my heart, whatever it was. I'll take it personally, but I'll take it personally later. But I think what I've heard is that that's no longer the sight line. We're no longer looking at that. We're looking at how we continue to feed people and make them part of learning what we know and learning what they know for the next many, many, many years to come. I want to thank every panelist here for traveling wherever they traveled from. I want to thank my partner, Ed, for all they've done. I want to thank you for participating, because the greatest conversation comes when two parties sit down there and have a good conversation. So please take a break. Our master classes start at 3 o'clock, and I look forward so much to the next day and a half and continuing this conversation. Thank you all.